Welcome, welcome to the Wellther series. This is number of 5 with Indra Singh. And as you've been listening to the other ones, you know that we travel into many different spaces. And today is no different. And Indra and I are going to explore a couple of topics, and then we're going to see what happens. And one of the ones that I'd like to touch bases with you now is because it happens to be something I was just working on the other day, Indra, was the concept of listening. That thing called listening. And I know that this is an important word for you as well. So do you want to just share, how that unfolds for you?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, I sort of cackled a bit like a witch there because I find it I find it a funny word because it's always a word that I've had an issue with as far as family, being young. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. And now, as somebody who works with other people, I now have to listen to other people. And what a skill listening is. I mean, it's its own thing, isn't it? Listening, it sort of stands alone. It's like its own job. That we don't. I guess we don't have jobs that are called listeners, and we're paid for it. But we're counselors, we're healers, and we are sort of taught from birth to actually listen, or we actually train ourselves to listen because it is such a skill. And I've noticed that I've had to really work on my listening.
Yes. Yeah.
Because family has always been, believe it or not, I'm one of the quietest people in my whole family. But I've actually felt that it's been so loud and so noisy that I've spent a lot of my time during my childhood being in that space of just listen. So now working with people and having to listen to them and sort of working out what they're trying to say, even though it's in my own language. That is the thing for me, which would take me actually in, I don't want to go into communication, but it does. That's where it takes me, into communicating,
Yeah.
which is one in itself with the witch cackle.
Yeah.
Because it's,
Well, it's true because there's this notion of hearing and listening. And I always think of hearing as hearing the sound. Yeah. And there's sounds. But when you're listening, you're putting the sounds together. Those form the words. Those words form the phrases. Those phrases give meaning. And into it that you go. And that's what I was writing about the other day, and how important it is to really start looking at the meaning and the meaningful pattern that's there, and recognize what someone's saying.
Yes. Because there's listening and there's listening, isn't there? I mean, you can always tell when somebody's really listening and when somebody's just kind of, their eyes are flitting all over the place and they're not listening.
Yeah. Well, it's true. And I think you brought up a great point, is that this notion of listening and practice, you've got to be confident in your listening. And sometimes we zip by this notion of confidence. And I'd like you to share a little bit about maybe confidence as it maybe links to listening, or use confidence as a segue to something else. But what about confidence in your world? Where do you go with that?
I feel I've had to really learn confidence and teach myself confidence. I think my confidence came from being a child I was somebody who danced a lot, who was on stage a lot. And it was good for my confidence because I was kind of made to do it. And that sounds a bit cruel, but actually it was a good thing for me because I was able to that was a place where I was able to open. And a lot of people say to me, you say you might not have a lot of confidence, but you come across like you do because you're okay. You come across openly. And I think inside we all have a lack of confidence somewhere in our lives, we're not always confident. But I think you have to be confident in your listening as well when you're helping others, because you can't miss what they say. Because how are you going to, for example, for me, if I'm giving somebody a flower essence, I have to hear everything that they say. Otherwise, I'm prescribing them the wrong flower essence. And that's a big deal for me for their healing journey, So I have to really listen and pick up on words that they use and say, and even go back on their words just to get some clarity.
So when you speak about it from a dancing point of view, confidence, there's another kind of listening that's happening, which is your body listening.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you would have had to have taken that to a major level to be able to have that happen, right? Because that takes you on an amazing journey, dancing, and now taking it into, I'm thinking the work that you do with the flower essence is the journey, right? It's very much, I'll call it a physical journey, a mental journey, a soulful journey, a spirited journey, right? All of those happen. So obviously, journey is an important word that we need to do a quick exploration. So what does journey mean for you, do you think?
Soul journey are the words I like. Yeah. Because again, going back to the listening, I kind of run parallel with the people that I work with. So I take them, or I follow them on their soul journey when we're going through the healing process. So it's a case of not only listening and watching and being confident in what they're doing, but I'm following them along their soul journey to help heal them. Whereas my soul journey, well, I know what I'm doing and I know I'm doing it right.
Right.
So far. So the journey to me is about it's about, we spoke about flow before, it's about flow. It's about allowing the universe to really open up to me and let me just go with its calling, and just listen to me and listen to what the universe is saying through me, which is my big thing. That's what I love to do, and that's what I love to share with others. That's huge for me.
So in that journey, something is just popping into my head here. So let me explore it just for a second. I'd like to say that all parts of our journey and all ways in which we listen is all positive. Sometimes, though, we step on our own toes or we get in our way, and something like guilt probably pops up into our conversations and into our listening and can provide block. I don't know where this is just popping in right now. Because we can share these stories here and where you're coming from. However, we got to touch a little bit on shadow sometimes in here. And thoughts about guilt? Well, there we go.
Guilt is one of those very unnecessary emotions, but it's one that hangs over so many of us, especially as mothers. Not that I want to say to men, hey, you're not here on this, you feel it too, but maybe not as much as we do. We own this guilt. We have to feel guilty. But isn't it unnecessary? I mean, it's such an unnecessary feeling that we go through. The need to feel, it's almost like a need to feel guilty to feel alive. It's such a shadow emotion. And again, I work with a lot of mothers who actually hold that energy of guilt. This is why I prescribe pine so much, because pine is so wonderful for guilt, for helping release guilt, not to give guilt. But it's just that energy it's zapping. It's like jealousy. It's zapping. It's draining, and that's an emotion that I try and steer away from. But if I get myself into that place of, oh, what have I done? Have I done that wrong? Oh, maybe I should have treated this one like this or treated that one like that. And just, I could feel guilty about everything, if I really wanted to. I'm that kind of sensitive, I could feel bad about it. But I don't think it's a beneficial emotion for anybody. So it's one I work quite close to with a lot of people. And it's usually the first one to release, but it's very quick to come back as well, because it's got its claws in from, I think, our childhood, really, that we build up that sort of emotion of guilt, not being a good enough child or, sibling or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, seeing as that we're exploring this, one of the things that I realized early on was that guilt is really about our history. And it's very much comes from a place of something that we've done.
Yes.
And when you're talking about, did I give the correct essence? I think that would be sort of part of the story. It's like, did I write the correct words? Did I make that presentation in such a way that I'm touching people the way that I would really like to touch them, and the way they want to be touched? And I understand guilt, right? We all have it in our own ways. So, what's aside from the essence that you're able to share with people? What might be a suggestion for a way to deal with guilt in your world? How would you go about doing that?
I use meditation a lot,
Okay.
because I do believe that with guilt, you gave a good example there, because you can feel guilty about anything. If you just sit for a moment, you can make yourself feel guilty about absolutely anything in the world. This is why it's such a powerful, I'm not going to say negative, because I don't like that word. It's a shadow emotion, and it serves us because it brings us back to who we are, because if we can see it, then we can sort of push it away. So I would say definitely meditation. And then, of course, my flower essences. And then on top of that, if I'm really feeling heavy with that kind of emotion, I'll dance. I use a lot. I use my physical body. I dance a lot. I do jump rope. I do yoga, and I'm very physical. So that's a good way for me to release it, because I tend to feel my shadow emotions in my physical. Like they sit in my shoulders or wherever, and I can feel them. And a lot of the time I need to release it.
Yeah.
So that's how I let it go. Walking in the woods.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny is because on my phone, what I've done is I've set these little reminders that pop up about every 2 hours. And one of them is relieve my tension, release my tension. And
Right.
all you have to do is just get up and go.
Yeah.
Right. That's my form of dancing.
Yes, good. That's perfect, though. That's what kids should be doing at school every 20 minutes. They should all be getting up and shaking and then sitting back down.
Yeah.
It's such an easy thing that they could do with them.
But when you've been dancing and when you're sharing these essences and the stories of essences, come on, you must have some naysayers that are getting into there must be some people who are popping up going, hey, come on now, I don't know about this. Right? Right? I'm not sure that this story that you're sharing right now is, come on, like you have to deal with naysayers because of the kind of work you do. Give us some sense of where you're going with that one.
Stop. Okay, so I've been called woo woo. I've been called I've had so many words thrown at me. I won't swear on here, but there's so much that's been said to me that, how does this work? And I'm not there to convince the naysayers that this work works. In my eyes, if you feel vibration and if you know that everything holds vibration, then to me, why wouldn't this work? So my market isn't to actually call on the naysayers and necessarily say, come on here and work with me and sit in your negativity and point a finger at me. I just try and put myself out there to the people who do really, truly honor this kind of work. But yes, I've had some stories. I've sat with people and had cups of tea, and they've said things to me like, I think what you do is beautiful, but I don't believe any of it. And how does it work? And you can sit and you can tell them how it works, but I don't believe that you can actually really understand how it works unless you try it, because it works so differently for everybody. Because every essence that I produce will work differently for you than it will for me, because we're all going through different things. So it's, there's a lot. I'm in the minority, but that's okay. And I don't believe that I'll be, or certainly it might not even be in my lifetime, but I think this work will grow into being in the majority. I'm already seeing it, it's already getting bigger and bigger and bigger with the flower essence world. So I'm hoping that eventually people will start to see it working for them.
So when you mentioned about those naysayers and sitting and having a cup of tea, I'm going to circle back. There must have been some really interesting listening that you had to do and not jump at it. Unfortunately, they may not have been listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
They just may have been hearing some sounds, but not really listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with the naysayers, I appreciate, sitting in your confidence, right? Sitting there and being present. But there must be times where, have you ever had to actually get up and say, take care, it's time to move on?
Yeah, what I've done is I've diverted the conversation.
Okay.
Let's talk about something else, because what happens to me is, because I work energetically, I feel my energy dropping. So when I talk to people, I tend to connect with them energetically. So if I feel that they're not with it, but they're asking questions, oh, I've got a broken arm, heal that type of thing. Well, I'm sorry, but it's not going to work for that in the way you think it is, I would just kind of go, okay, let's change the subject, or I would divert the conversation, because I could feel my energy dropping. And what happens is you start to feel, heavy with it. Like I say, I'm not there to convince naysayers that this works. I just know it does from my own experience. And that's where it stems from. It's from my experience that I'm sharing it with everybody else. And it's been proved that it does work.
Right. Well, I appreciate you taking it, because it's easy for you to go, oh yeah, I just get up and walk away. But in our world, that's not going to help, because that can embed what it is that they're saying deeper inside those people, right? Not those people, but into that person who's having that conversation with you, versus using techniques like a divert. So thank you for that. I appreciate you taking that and reworking it a little bit. All right, because
too much. It means too much to me to actually walk away, because you're right. That's how I would feel. It would feel like I was running from it. So no, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it's standing there in our confidence, listening to what's going on, continuing our journey, even though the naysayers are jumping in there all over what it is that's taking place, right? And just being able to not feel any kind of guilt. I think I wove the 5 words in that we were talking about today, weren't we?
Yeah.
Right? And it very much comes back to a word that we didn't get a chance to really unpack. Maybe we can do it a little bit more, but it's really about the way in which we go about doing our communication. And you are very eloquent in how you share what you do. And I always appreciate that, because there's something there to live with and to work for. And I appreciate that. So thank you. So actually that gets us to a point where we're pretty close to our time on this interview. And just before we leave, from a place of confidence, because that's where one of the first places we started. How is it that someone can grow their confidence?
Oh, I have a really great example of that from last week, actually, a personal one. Well, for me, when I was doing, shall I share that?
Sure, go for it.
I was doing, I have a lady who I've worked with on one-to-ones, and she's been to a couple of my retreats as well. And one of her major things was she was lacking in confidence, and she was just, her self-esteem was so low. And I asked her last week, because I'm running a Facebook Live every Wednesday now with one of the people who works with me every single week. So they were talking about one-to-ones, or the Wild One weekend that I do. So I asked her, and I just said to her, would you really like to do a live with me on Facebook? Because, I really value what you have to say. I know it's last minute. It was the day before, because somebody had dropped out. And she went, yes, let's do it. Let's do it. And she did it. And she did it really, really well. And I was so really proud of her. I was just like, this is great. So basically she's worked with me one-to-one. She's been on my Wild One weekend, so she's taken flower essences for the last 2 years, and she's taken them for 2 years, but she's been working with me personally for just under 6 months. And she's just come from being somebody who literally would hide in a corner to being this woman who is now prepared to sit on a Facebook Live and talk. So, you know, that's just from working energetically with nature. And to me, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a story.
It's great, no, because it's from a place of step from.
Yeah.
We talk about step up, we get that notional leveling, but step from is that she stepped from her future into her presence by being with you and participating with you. And is that not a great way to grow your confidence?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a wonderful story. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. No, it's good.
Okay. Well, take care, and we'll, we've actually got a 5th one to do, don't we? So I think people catch up on the 5th one that's coming to you very soon. So take care.